Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Miss Allison, and I am your host for today. This is your teacher, Miss Latondra. I hope you were all excited because today we are going to learn about bees and wasps. Have fun!
Awesome. Just like Miss Allison said, today we're going to learn about bees and wasps. So let's take a look at our slide to look at our objectives for today's lessons. So today, as we said, our lesson is titled Social Insects, Bees and Wasps. So at the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain the most insects live solitary lives, but some, such as honeybees and paper wasps, are social. You will be able to distinguish between social and solitary insects. Describe how all members of a social insect colony come from one queen. Describe the roles of honeybee workers, drones, and queens, and describe how honeybees communicate with one another through dances. So, before we get started, let's take a look at our KWL chart. Miss Allison is going to help us. Now, we're going to review, what does KWL mean? Do you remember from our previous lesson? That's right. The K stands for what we know. The W stands for what we wonder, and the L stands for what we learn. Okay, so let's get started. Miss Allison, do you know where honeybees and paper wasps live?
I know that honeybees live in a beehive, and I think that paper wasps live in a nest.
That's exactly right. So we're going to add that to what we know on our KWL chart. Honeybees live in beehives and paper wasps live in nests. Awesome. So what else can you tell us about honeybees and wasps?
Oh, I know that honeybees produce honey.
That's right.
I love honey.
And I wonder what gave her a clue. Yes, their names are honeybees. So let's add that to our chart as well. Okay, so one more thing that you know about honeybees or wasps, Miss Allison.
Well, I know that honeybees pollinate flowers, and I think that wasps do too.
That's exactly right. Both honeybees and wasps pollinate flowers. So we're going to add that to our to the K on our KWL chart for what we know. Awesome job. So these are all the things that we already know about wasps and honeybees. So now we're going to talk about some things that we wonder. Do you have any questions that you may have about wasps and honeybees?
I do have one question. I believe that there's a queen bee, and I wonder what she does.
That's an awesome question. I wonder, what does the queen bee do? So let's add that to our W under what we wonder. Okay, what else do you wonder, Miss Allison?
I really want to know if all bees sting.
That's a good question as well. I wonder that's going to be something that we're going to learn about in our read aloud. So let's add that to our W, what we wonder. Okay, is there anything else, Miss Allison?
I know we said that wasps live in nests, but I wonder what their nests are made of.
That's a good question. I see them all the time, but I'm not sure what they're made of. So that'll be something for us to learn today as well. So let's add that to our W. Okay, very good. Now that we have our KWL chart filled out, before we get into our read aloud, let's take a look at our slides and look at our vocabulary words for today. So the first word that we're going to look at is honeycomb. A honeycomb is a structure made by bees in their hive. It is made up of many six-sided wax cells in which honey is stored and eggs are laid. Listen to this sentence. Worker bees work quickly to build the cells of the honeycomb. Can you say the word honeycomb with me 3 times? Honeycomb, honeycomb, honeycomb. Awesome job. Our next word is wasp. In today's Read Aloud, you will hear about a relative of the honeybee called a paper wasp. Say the word wasp with me 3 times. Wasp, wasp, wasp. A paper wasp is a thin black and yellow flying insect that can sting you. Paper wasps live in large groups and they build nests. Listen to this sentence. My father carefully removed the nest that the paper wasp built over the door to our house. Look at this paper wasp. Now look at this honeybee. What are the differences between these two? Very good. A honeybee is fuzzy and thicker, and a paper wasp is shiny, smooth, and thinner. All right, so we're going to get ready to read our story for today. So we're going to look, I want us to listen for our purpose for listening. Today, we're going to learn about 3 types of honeybees and paper wasps: workers, drones, and the queen. Listen carefully to find out what jobs each type of bee must perform in order to survive. Bzzz, bzzz. Oh, you startled me. I am so busy that I nearly forgot where I was. I'm a honeybee, and I'm delighted to be here to tell you a little bit about my everyday world. Honeybees are quite social. Humans are social too, which means that they live together in communities or groups. Instead of living alone, social insects live in communities too. Most insects are solitary, living alone their entire lives. They are alone when they hatch from their eggs. They search for food alone, and they find their own shelter. There are thousands of different kinds of bees on the planet, and most of them live solitary lives. But honeybees are different. We live together in organized communities and depend upon one another to live, solving problems as a team. We gather and share food, build nests together, cooperate to raise our young, and help protect one another from enemies. What does the word cooperate mean? Very good. It means to work together. Honeybee communities are called colonies. Our colonies are made up of 20,000 or more bees. We like to make our nests or beehives in dark places. That's why you often see pictures of us buzzing about in the trunks of hollow trees. People use beehive boxes to raise honeybees for honey. Perhaps you've seen these boxes in a field, orchard, or backyard. Wherever we nest, we build honeycombs. This amazing structure of layered cells is made from a waxy substance that we produce in our abdomens. Can you spot a pattern among the cells in this honeycomb? Yes, they are all 6-sided. What purpose do all of these cells serve? These cells are very important to our lives. Listen carefully and I'll tell you how they are important to the many jobs we perform. Remember, I told you we are very social insects and very busy. There is lots of work to be done, and each bee in the colony has its own job to do. Every honeybee colony has a mother called the queen bee. The queen bee is always the largest bee in the hive, and she has only one job to do. She must lay eggs, lots and lots of eggs. She must produce more queens for other hives and make sure there are enough worker bees to do the work in her own hive. The queen bee flies from the nest to mate with male bees called drones. Once a drone has mated with the queen bee, it has done its job and then it dies. Drones cannot sting because they don't have stingers. When the queen returns, she lays her eggs, sometimes more than 1,000 eggs a day. Where do you think the queen bee lays all these eggs? Right, she returns to the comb to lay them there in the cells. The queen then pushes tiny eggs, no bigger than a pinhead, from her abdomen into the waxy cells of the honeycomb, one egg to each cell. Do you remember which part of the insect's body is its abdomen? That's right, it's the section at the end farthest away from the insect's head. In just a few days, the eggs hatch. The larvae get fed pollen by one of the hive's female worker bees. The larvae grow and eventually spin silky cocoons. Worker bees quickly seal over the small waxy cells of the honeycomb, protecting the developing pupa inside each cocoon. Does this process sound familiar? It should. The bees are undergoing a change. When they emerge from their cocoons, they will chew their way out of the cells, emerging as full-grown adults. In the previous read aloud, you heard a word that means the changes in an insect goes through during its life cycle. What is the word that refers to that change? That's right, metamorphosis. Most of the new adults are female worker bees. They only live for a few months, and they spend their whole lives working hard to keep the hive running well. They keep the hive clean. They serve as nurse bees tending to the larvae. They make new cells and repair old ones, and they store nectar and pollen that others bring back to the hive. After several weeks working inside the hive, these hard-working females go outside to serve as guards, protecting the hive from enemies and bees from other hives. Each hive has its own special chemical scent or smell, so it is easy to tell who doesn't belong in the hive. Near the end of her life, a worker bee becomes a forager bee, collecting a sweet juice from flowers. This juice, or nectar, is used to make honey. Foraging worker bees have keen senses of smell and sight and very good memories. They may visit thousands of flowers each day to find the best nectar. A forager is an animal that wanders over an area in search of food. When a bee discovers a particularly good source of nectar, it returns to the hive to share its information with other foragers. First, it lets the other foragers smell the pollen so that they can identify the type of flower. Then, it performs a complicated and special waggle dance. As it circles about in a pattern like a figure 8, it wags its abdomen as it moves through the middle of its dance. The bee's repeated movements, circling and waggling its abdomen, tell the others exactly how far away and in which direction from the sun the flowers are located. A bee that thinks she has found a really good flower patch does the waggle dance with lots of energy. Where do you suppose the bees put the nectar when they return to the hive? They make the nectar into honey and store it in honey cells, the cells that are not being used for developing bees. The honey is an important food source for the bees. While moving from flower to flower, worker bees rub up against a yellow powder called pollen. Honeybees will pack the pollen into baskets of hairs on their hind legs, and then they carry it with them. Pollen is used to feed the larvae, but this pollen is important stuff for another reason. Plants need pollen from other plants in order to make new seeds. This is called pollination. Honeybees are important because they carry the pollen between flowers of the same species or kind. Who remembers what a species is? That's right, a species is a group of plants or animals that are alike. I'd like to introduce you to a relative of mine. This is a paper wasp. Look closely at its body next to mine. What do we have in common? We each have a head. We each have a thorax with 6 legs, an abdomen, an exoskeleton, and wings. And this particular wasp, the paper wasp, is a social insect, just like me. Some wasps are solitary, but the black and gold ones nearly always live in societies. Like honeybees, wasps live in large groups. What are these groups called? Yes, wasps live in colonies. Each colony has a leader, a female wasp who is bigger than all the other wasps and who spends most of her time laying eggs. Sound familiar? What is she called? Yes, the queen. Like honeybees, wasps build nests. They build them in many different places, usually in hidden, difficult to see places that are protected from rain and bad weather, such as under the eaves of houses or in protected areas on trees. Wasp nests have a very different look from beehives on the outside, but their paper-like structures are similar to ours on the inside. We'll take a look at how paper wasps build their nests. The process begins with the queen. She finds plant fibers, dry grasses, old boards, fence posts, and pulls them apart with her strong jaws. She softens the splintery pieces with saliva inside her mouth and chews them into a paste that looks and feels a little like paper. Then she sticks a dab of this paste to whatever surface she has chosen for her nest. The queen adds a tough stem to support the whole nest and begins attaching cone-like chambers to it. These clusters of 6-sided chambers open downward to keep the rain out. As the queen forms each chamber, she deposits an egg in each one. The eggs develop into larvae. The queen wasp takes care of the first larva herself. She leaves the nest to find food, capturing and chewing other insects into mush to feed her young. About 2 weeks after hatching, the larvae enter the pupa stage, spinning cocoons inside each cell and covering the cells with silk. These sealed cells break open a few weeks later and come out adult wasps with long legs, strong wings, and large eyes. Most of these newly hatched wasps are female workers who begin to take over the queen's work right away. They hunt for food and feed the larvae, clean and repair the cells, and guard the nest. Others fan the nest with beating wings, and some even spread water over the combs to keep the nest cool. While the workers enlarge the nest for more and more wasps, the queen goes back to laying eggs. By summer's end, many of the workers have died. There are often 250 or more cells inside the wasp papery nest. The wasps that do emerge at the end of summer are no longer female worker wasps. Instead, they are new queens and males. The new queens find shelter in protected places in attic walls, inside logs, under bushes, where they hibernate all winter. When spring comes, the new queens come out from hiding and begin building nests for new colonies of wasps. All wasps abandon their nests in the fall, using them for one season only. When fall comes and the leaves drop from the trees, look up and see if you can spot one of their papery apartment houses dangling from under a roof or partially hidden behind a wall. Next time, you'll find out how some other social insects build their nests. Until then, be thinking about who they might be. So, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that read aloud. So, before we go on, let's think about that read aloud for a minute, and we're going to answer a few questions. Miss Allison is going to help us. Miss Allison, in our story, we found out some things about the queen bee. The queen bee has one job to perform. What is it?
The queen bee's job is to lay the eggs.
Very good. The queen bee's job is to lay the eggs. Okay, very good. Are there more male or female bees in the hive?
There's more girls or females.
That's exactly right. And why is that?
The females are the worker bees, and many more of them are needed to do all the work in the hive.
That is exactly right. Thank you, Miss Allison. So what are the male bees called?
The male bees are called drones.
That's right. The male bees are called drones. Wow, boys and girls, we learned so much from that read aloud. That was awesome. So now let's take a look again at our KWL chart. So we first talked about what we know, then we talked about what we wonder. And now let's see what we learned. We asked, what does the queen bee do? Miss Allison answered that for us. Miss Allison, do you remember what the queen bee does?
Yes, the queen bee lays the eggs.
Very good. Her only job is to lay eggs. So let's add that to what we have learned. Awesome job. The next thing we learned was, well, Miss Allison, help us with this. What else did we learn about do all bees sting?
Well, I learned that not all bees sting.
Very good.
The drones, they don't have any stingers, so they can't sting.
The drones do not have stingers, so they do not sting. All right, the very last thing, what did we learn again, Miss Allison?
Well, I asked what wasp nests are made of. And I heard in the read aloud that wasp nests are made of pieces of plant fibers, dry grasses, old boards, fence posts, and something really strange, saliva.
Very good. It's made of the wasp saliva. They use their saliva when they are chewing on these things to make it very pasty to make their nest. Very good. So we learned so much about wasps and bees today. Boys and girls, we are so thankful that you joined us today. We had so much fun with you all.
We sure did. We thank you for joining us today. All rights and credits from this lesson belong to Core Knowledge Language Arts. We would like to thank them for publicly sharing these materials.
Very good. I want you to use what you've learned today. Go tell a friend or someone at home what you've learned about bees and wasps. So we want you to check out these books that will be listed on the slides so that you can check them out online or either in your local library. Until next time, we thank you for joining us again.